You're not going to be able to just re-release a game like StarCraft 2, making marginal improvements and expect it to be popular, because StarCraft 2 wasn't popular multiplayer-wise in that same way as these other games. That's what everybody's been saying the last 10 years. And if you're not willing to evolve or try to change or try to grow, then you might as well just sit and play on the game until Blizzard, 40 years if they turn the servers off. Why do you care about a StarCraft 3 if change is the last thing you ever want to see? You have to grow and evolve with the market, with the environment. But you can't just open an establishment and be like, guys, we only serve nuclear hot wings. You have to sign a waiver for. That's the customer we want. We only want the most hardcore chicken wing fanatics. If you want mild, we're going to tell you to get the fuck out, you casual. We're going to tell you to get lost, right? So that's what StarCraft is. StarCraft 2 and StarCraft, like Brood War especially, is a bar that's run by some old guy that's like, we have 2 things on our menu. If you don't want them, get the fuck out, right? But you want to make money. You want to be able to pay your bills. You want to be able to pay rent, right? You know you're going to quadruple. You're going to 50 times your income if you add mild wings and a regular shitty Bud Light to that menu. Because then the guy who just wants to stop in for wings and a beer is going to stop in and be able to get that. So how do you find a way to provide that environment for StarCraft?
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Pylon Show. This is episode number 110. We have a wonderful cast here today to talk about the big news that Blizzard put out a while ago. But first, let me mention the Patreon. That's how we fund the show. Patreon.com/The Pylon Show. Go check it out.
This Age of Empires 4 promise anything about this monetization that we're talking about?
That'd be cool.
Like,
that'll be interesting, actually. Maybe. I don't know.
I think AoE 4 would be in a position to do it. I think they're the first big studio that are like coming up with
that. Should be the next big RTS to be released.
That's the first one that I'm excited about since StarCraft 2 came out. Right? Like every other RTS I've checked out, and I'm excited about it.
But my point is, like, no one seems to have. Unfortunately, no one. It doesn't seem, anyways, because there's probably like someone who's like, I know this one game. It doesn't seem like any RTS has come out that didn't do that well with sales, and we kind of forget it, but actually had this amazing marketing, that had this amazing microtransactions, right? Like, it doesn't seem like anything for that has been built for Frost Giant to go, okay, good game StarCraft, plus this beautiful mixture of what made RTS actually, something that people would buy more shit from, and let's just like fucking merge them together, right? It seems like nothing exists that says this is how you make an RTS with microtransactions and that can sustain itself.
Well, I think you're definitely right about that. Like, there's not a model, I think, for RTS, because when you think about the way RTS is played, look at a MOBA, right? Like, you can give people a certain amount of characters that they can play, and you can play the full game, right? As long as you have like a character of each, a healer and a fucking jungler or whatever the fuck we call these stupid magic casting stupid game. But you can get people to buy, first off, skins for their favorite ones, but then also new ones that come out. You can't do that with RTS. You can't have someone buy a new unit. You can't, because it breaks the game instantly. Then it becomes play to win. Like, you have to have everyone has to have the playable version at the base.
At the same time, Dan, as I know that this is something that no fan of StarCraft really wants to consider, but that is actually one of the few somewhat reasonable ways to go forward. Having some level of interchangeability of what you have is definitely one way to make money. All the arguments about, this guy's Hellions and this guy's Vultures, it's the same thing with any of these other games. People come in with a million different fucking loadouts. Oh, this gun's broken. Well, everyone doesn't uninstall the game when that happens. They try to make a hot fix. This is how every other game happens. There's hundreds of characters in League. No matter
You're
how
wrestling
broken,
my jimmies, Nate.
I'm just saying.
CSGO has a lot of alternate guns.
Look, I'm telling you, you could either try to put 40 races, which would never happen, or you can have unit loadouts, interchangeable types of upgrades. You find a way. You get people who are creative, people who are passionate about making this work, build systems where you can have ways of limiting what you're doing, like it's a deck builder or like it's a MOBA. I know now nobody wants to hear that. But
nobody does.
Unfortunately,
I don't hear it, Nate.
if you want to see RTS exist in a future where these are the types of games that are popular, you're not going to be able to just re-release a game like StarCraft 2, making marginal improvements and expect it to be popular, because StarCraft 2 wasn't popular multiplayer wise in that same way as these other games. That's what everybody's been saying the last 10 years. And if you're not willing to evolve or try to change or try to grow, then you might as well just sit and play on the game until Blizzard, 40 years if they turn the servers off. Why do you care about a StarCraft 3 if change is the last thing you ever want to see? You have to grow and evolve with the market, with the environment. Not everyone's going to do it right either.
Imagine if the multiplayer was like the campaign.
Bang Nate, they're saying in chat, but I'm with you, Nate.
I don't give a fuck, man. I don't give a fuck. A lot of live service games do it fantastically.
Let's try to get outside. Okay, Ruff, what do you think about Nate's idea there?
I actually think it's pretty interesting, because let's assume, okay, you have your base core of units and you play your multiplayer. Let's say you start the game, the loading screen comes up. Your opponent decided instead of Hellions, he has Vultures.
Maybe you get
balanced. Thor, he has a Goliath. And you have this and that. Immediately, you've got to think, okay, I got to figure out, I'm fighting versus this. I have to evolve my strategies into something else. It's almost like incorporating your campaign selection into the multiplayer. And it sounds really cool, actually. But the thing is that it's so complex. How do you even get close to balancing that? But it sounds like a really cool idea, though.
I mean, a couple of things, right? Like, how do you balance it? Where do you stop? Is this going to be the only microtransactions? You have like 20 different versions of
there could be picks and bans for balance.
There's another solution people don't notice either, though. Most StarCraft balance changes are grossly outside any scientific measurable way of looking at data. First of all, making more than a 5% change means that you have no idea if what you're doing is actually a small. If you're like, oh, we're going to make a small change. When you raise a unit's damage by 2 or its health by 15, you're working with rather large percentages. That a lot of time with StarCraft, they always talk about how they don't want things to be ugly. We don't want to have resources that aren't divisible by 5 or whatever on this stuff. Yeah. If you're willing to be flexible, and I actually agree with that philosophy. But you have to be flexible about getting around that in a way that you can make a 5% change, because that's what the other games do. Like, when a character is overpowered in League, they don't immediately do like, oh, it's going to take 30% off. Like, everything I see in other games patch notes is we're going to take damage down by 1. We're going to reduce the turn radius, the turn speed of this unit by 0.1, by 0.5%, by 0.5%. And when you do that, if you have a lot of variables, as long as you're making small enough changes that you're like, this is just meant to be a tiny push. Whereas in StarCraft, we go from like, oh, we've decided to just cut this ability's damage in half or double its cooldown, right? And you're like, that's a fucking 100 or a 50% change. How on earth could you possibly be like, within a span of a month or a week, saying, oh yeah, we totally have the data to know that we can just double this stat and it's not going to have a massive impact? Mm-hmm. That's how you survive with having more variables. You don't double a unit's movement speed or raise it by 15%. You raise it by like 2 or 3%. We already have ugly numbers in move speed. They could have easily done that instead of saying, well, everything's just going to get plus 25% because it looks nice to write 25% in a patch note. Like,
so one thing is that I do think that they were awfully sometimes short-sighted. It might not be the right word, but like turn rate was like, I don't remember ever turn rate really being changed in StarCraft. I do think that they had many avenues to go to buff and nerf StarCraft, and they always went movement speed for like 90% of their shit. And that was annoying. I absolutely agree with that. But my point that I was going to make before, that third point, was that the really nice thing about StarCraft, though, that and this is the benefit of not having all of these variables, is that you can go back to StarCraft for 10 years and still have roughly the same game. Everything is divisible by 5. You still have Vespene and minerals. You still have the same units in the race, except that, okay, you haven't been around. There's 3 new units per, but that's every 5 years or whatever, right? Like, I personally get turned off from going back to League of Legends or any other game, basically, that's ever existed, because there is so much to learn if I've been gone for 6 months. If I've been gone for 6 months from StarCraft, there's new metas. There might be some changes, but if I'm Platinum League and I'm playing StarCraft as Platinum League, basically throughout the last 10 years. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's what I really like about StarCraft. So I don't really think that we have to make it so complicated. The one thing that has actually been very good about StarCraft and Blizzard's philosophy is to keep things simple, right? People always think that StarCraft is this amazingly complex game, because in many ways it is, but in many other ways it's not. Everything kind of works like we think it's going to work, which is one of the best features of it, right? And that's why it's been so hesitant to put in new abilities that suddenly have an aura. You know, could they have put an aura into StarCraft and been like, the mothership now has an aura? Yeah, they could have. But it also just entirely breaks their game philosophy and the way that StarCraft is streamlined, right?
Kind of.
That's still related to the content release schedule, though. If you're releasing content on a more consistent basis, almost every single modern game that's popular right now has proved that your player base does not just fall off. Like, there are still a shit ton, insane number of people playing Fortnite, PUBG, all of these games because they put out stuff at a pace that people feel motivated to want to play. You're not wrong in that a benefit of StarCraft is you could take a 6-month break and not as much changes as other games, but like if you're building your strategy around people that you expect to take 6-month breaks, like I don't really know what the focus was in the first place.
Yeah.
But I feel like there should be some flexibility to allow both, right? So I posed the question of what can you do to monetize an RTS? And I had my own answers, but let everyone talk us first, right? And I think Frost Giant has actually even already kind of, suggested that they are thinking the same way that I was thinking, which is that you can have 1v1 and then you can do co-op. And imagine what they could have done with co-op if it was there from the start. Imagine them using co-op to then have a jumping board to then do basically an ARAM, right? Something that is just like, fuck all, it's StarCraft, but it ain't StarCraft, They're basically going to put Direct Strike into StarCraft and call it and say it was their idea. That would be fucking fantastic. And they could do whatever they want with those modes. They could do whatever they want. They could put in skins that don't make any sense. And finally some fun skins too, and not just like a different color. But they could just save 1v1 as 1v1. Clearly, there is somewhat of a market for what we are interested in. And to basically say, no, we have to go entirely the League of Legends path would be a travesty. I feel like you would have me in Artosis at the very least not playing video games anymore. There's clearly people like us, and I think you can appeal to both without just being like, nope, the core game has to explode, has to be changed completely. And I think they've already mentioned some things like that.
Yeah, I agree. Go on.
I was going to say I agree. I've done a rant, Cats. You're good.
Okay, I was going to say I agree with both. I agree with both of you. There is definitely the you and Artosis type of people, and I talked to a lot of engineers, for example, that stopped playing StarCraft after Wings of Liberty because when the game got changed in Wings of Liberty, they thought, well, that's too much. That's too much change. I don't like change. And that's why Artosis is playing Brood War still, right? Like it's like, like that's there are those people for sure, but those people are not gonna make money for the game, and they're not gonna make the game sustainable because you don't need to sell them anything. It's like what Nate was saying; they're gonna be playing the game regardless, right? So if we don't want to reach a point like we're reaching now, you need to implement some semblance of like active change from which they can profit. And I think, you could put it in co-op because that's the game that you don't like. But why not put it in 1v1? Because
I like co-op fine. I play co-op all the time. But like, for instance, in your example, instead of that engineer coming back after 5 years and being like, oh, 1v1, that's just way too difficult. I don't want to relearn this. They go, oh, StarCraft. I love StarCraft. Oh, there's like an ARAM version? All right, yeah, I guess I'll pick that up.
What's ARAM? What's ARAM?
All random, all middle. It's a League of Legends thing.
So you get a random champion. There's only one lane.
Oh,
it's completely different from the rest of League of Legends, except that it has the same heroes and the same.
It's like easier League of Legends.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean anything. It's like playing a mono battle in StarCraft. It's like, yes, this is StarCraft, but it's not really.
Nice,
but it's on the same.
I totally know what a mono battle is. He says he just nods a lot.
I do know that one.
The way to enter that mode is on the same page as playing ranked in League of Legends, and that's. My analogy for this, because I've been thinking about how I wanted to try and say this, is imagine that you want to go to a bar and you want to go to a place where if you want to get a strong drink, you can. If you want something that's not super crazy, you can do that too, right? But you can't just open an establishment and be like, guys, we only serve nuclear hot wings. You have to sign a waiver for it. That's the customer we want. We only want the most hardcore chicken wing fanatics. If you want mild, we're going to tell you to get the fuck out, you casual. We're going to tell you to get lost, right? So that's what StarCraft is. StarCraft 2 and StarCraft, like Brood War especially, is a bar that's run by some old guy that's like, we have 2 things on our menu. If you don't want them, get the fuck out, right? But you want to make money. You want to be able to pay your bills. You want to be able to pay rent, right? You're going to quadruple. You're going to 50 times your income if you add mild wings and a regular shitty Bud Light to that menu. Because then the guy who just wants to stop in for wings and a beer is going to stop in and be able to get that. So how do you find a way to provide that environment for StarCraft? How do you provide an environment where somebody who doesn't want to only eat nuclear hot wings can go to this place, not get shit on by the people who are eating those, and still have a good time, right?
Yeah.
That's the environment that we're trying that StarCraft needs. And Jess, you brought up one of my favorite examples. ARAM is a super casual thing that takes out a ton of the stress of playing League of Legends. Except one of the big differences is whenever I'm looking at anything League related, I don't see everybody shit on people who like playing ARAMs. I don't know anybody who doesn't play a couple of ARAMs every now and again, right? But you'll find tons of people who are proud to be ignorant of everything in SC2 outside of the versus mode, which you're allowed to be in that perspective. But the amount of people that you can drive away by being so elitist about something while also depending on them is just dumb. Right? If there's 300,000 people, this is my low ball estimate. If there's 300,000 people who've been playing co-op a month for the last 5 years since it was added, if there's 300,000 people and a tournament gets 30,000 viewers, who do you think is more likely to be able to convert to watching the tournament? Someone who plays co-op and gets disrespected constantly by everyone, or a guy who watches some other game and doesn't give a shit about StarCraft, right? Like there are opportunities here to engage with these other people within our own space that get laughed at, or just like you get laughed out of the room for bringing it up. And that's a massive, massive, massive problem that StarCraft has always had that we weren't able to get over. The fact that co-op brought so many people in, despite the fact that that was the way that things were before, the elitism, I mean, is just amazing to me.
I'm not going to disagree that StarCraft is elitist, but I am curious that you think that it's elitist in that way, because I came in from playing like ladder, and most people that I talk to who played Brood War talk about comp stomps. And, you know, any casual, I mean, on like Tinder or something talks about co-op. Like, I haven't seen much elitism when someone comes into a stream and says, you want to play co-op? I don't see them, you know, most streamers being like, what the fuck is that? The fuck is that? Get away from me. They're like, oh, I'm not really interested in it, you know? Or they say, hell yeah, let's do it, right? So I'm interested, like, I agree overall elitism in StarCraft is a problem. And I think we're ultimately in agreement, by the way, in that we basically I think that there's a world where both things can happen in the same game. You're talking about, like, you know, making the whole system implode and like starting over and doing really wacky shit, which I'm totally on board for. And I'm on board having those 30,000 people who watch 1v1 still have an option to have, you know, to watch that 1v1. Right? I just think that, like, in the example that we're talking about, that engineer, he comes in to play ARAM with his friends, inadvertently clicks the ladder button, you know, eventually, because he's like, man, I really miss this feeling. Comes back into StarCraft 1v1 and then goes back into the esport as well. Like, absolutely, I want the casuals to be sucked in and then eventually grow what could be a minor part, but still has room to grow competitive part. I think we're all in agreement here, unless I'm mistaken.
No, I think everyone's in agreement. I agree. It's just I think it's just a how much of it we want and where we want it that we're in disagreement, basically, right? Like
I don't want it in the main mode. Like, for instance, people bring up like a Immortal, which is apparently more of like a 2v2 focus, although they said they want 1v1 to be possible. Mm-hmm. Or in general, they're like, what if we had an RTS that is mostly a team game? And I'm just like, I'm going to be a big old baby if that's what ends up happening with Frostgiant. I don't want a team game. There are so many team games available, and only 2 1v1. Okay, 3 if you count Warcraft. And then, fighting, but anyways.
Yeah, I don't think that the difficulty or the complexity or the skill sets for 1v1 need to be touched. And I don't think that adding like stuff that to sell and profit, or like the idea that Nate was presenting that Ref liked on, like, say, selling different units, I don't think that like stuff like that is like out of complete, you know, I don't think that would break balance. And I agree with Nate in that a lot of balancing around StarCraft 2 and around most games is mostly perceptual, right? Because you never can know, for example, where the actual best player is. Like, what if the best player in the world actually plays obviously the best player in the world, or the most skillful player in the world, however you want to conceptualize of it, would be in one of the 3 races. And you can never balance around that, right? And there's not enough data, because you would also not know what data sets to look at. Because, you know, do you look at just pro games? Do you look at just the top 10% of pro games? Do you look at all of it? Do you know, to balance? It's all very subjective, and it's all like and it's never like we've never had it's very difficult to fuck up because it's such a massive ship again, right? So if you make a change, you'd have to be very stupid to make a change that changes balance in a way where it's like more than 5% difference from what it was before the change came in, right? Like it's just it would just be very difficult to fuck it up that badly. You would just So yeah, I think that's not an issue, like to blend in elements that would allow the game to, like, for example, I brought up and many people have brought up, it's a big discussion on the R Frost Giant, whether there should be heroes or not. I'm very much for heroes because I think heroes will generate a lot of revenue. You see, I think heroes, like, you can customize and personalize heroes, and you can like buy different skins and you can have them displayed, whereas your units in StarCraft can't, right? Like, I think that it would be smart of them to make heroes so that they can make a game that is sustaining over time, for instance. But people don't like hearing that in StarCraft 2 because
what is the difference? What is the difference between being able to pay for a hero that has a variety of different things that's going to have, let's assume, 3 abilities, and you put 50 heroes that you could have for your orcs or your space elves, whatever garbage. What is the difference between that and being like, hey guys, we're releasing the legacy pack. There's a Terran legacy pack for $10. You can unlock the vulture instead of the Hellion, and then you add a bunch of shit. You add a bunch of skins for that people can buy and pay for. What is the, like? You're doing the same thing. You're still doing something that's going to change things in a huge amount of ways, right? Like, you can still have those options in different ways.
Yeah. I'm not saying they need to have heroes. I'm saying like heroes are monetizable.
I do think heroes are more monetizable than what Nate suggested.
You're probably right.
Yeah, I think
you're
they're
probably
more
right with the hero
personalizable,
thing
and they show up in the big screen.
Yeah.
Maybe
Joan of Arc, man. Give me Joan of Arc, man. She's broken in AoE gold.
Sorry, Ruff, you saying something?
I was saying that if you have heroes, maybe they can just have different modes. Maybe there is a competitive mode with heroes, which might... I'm not sure what game it is. Is it Warcraft 3 that has heroes in it? Yeah. And then there's another mode that does...
Artosis. What are you laughing at?
Why not?
How do you not know Warcraft 3, man?
The last Warcraft I played was Warcraft 2.
Damn. You should try Warcraft 3, actually. You should give it a try. That'd be a fun thing on your stream. But I don't think you want to fracture the player base when you get into things like 1v1 mode or co-op mode. Like, have some different modes, but you got to be careful to not fracture things, right? You don't want... If you get a big divide and some people like heroes and some people don't... Imagine if Warcraft 3 and StarCraft 2 were actually the same game, but we now have split communities. You know how much stronger everything would be if all that was one community? Holy crap. We'd have so many more people. We'd have so many more viewers. We'd have so many... The ladder would be more competitive. The players would be better. All those things. So I feel like splitting things off or having too many modes would be painful for an RTS game at this point.
I feel like we kind of have to have a, Artosis, like how much you... This is going to be an interesting answer. How much do you really think 1v1 competitive RTS could be? Like, how many viewers could there be for just that mode if it was just Brood War still?
Oh, it could be gigantic, I think. Like, the thing is, we don't have any opportunities to do anything, right? Like, the esports, they've been cutting budget since 2016. 2016 was the peak of StarCraft 2 esports. Just for anyone who doesn't realize this, that's when they were really going hard, and then after that, budgets started getting cut. I know specifically because I work with everyone, and that was the year where everything was like, okay, this is how we want it, and then after that, it was like kind of going downhill. I feel like if we actually had any budget, like, instead of buying a fucking Overwatch team, if someone took that money and made some esports, maybe we could get something big. Instead, I guess let's just have 9 fucking Overwatch teams that are named after electricity. That's great. Okay, cool.
This actually is a perfect answer because it kind of goes on my other point that I was going to make. If we zoom out a little bit here, all right, like I think there is not such a high cap. All right, I'm not going to say it's 9 billion people viewer. I don't think we could beat League of Legends viewership and all that, but I think it could be much higher than what it is, of course.
Yeah, I'm not saying it would necessarily be the biggest esport, but it could be gigantic, right? Like, the thing is, look at sports. tennis gets good viewership. It does, right? Like we can get up to like a really reasonable rate. Are we going to be bigger than basketball? Probably not, because so many people play team games and shit, and they like that because it's easier, and they can blame teammates and shit when they lose. Okay,
Dude,
cool.
come on. That's such a fucking awful thing to say to preface your argument with. Come on, we say that every fucking time we talk about other games, and it's so disrespectful. Like, come on. The fact that it's easier is why it's more popular. Like,
Dude, more
why
people
do we always
play.
default
More
to
people
this?
play.
Why do we always default to that as the excuse for why it's bigger than us?
More people play it.
play
That's
video
why. That's why. More
That's such
people
an
play
awful
these other
argument,
games.
though.
Wait,
But is it not true?
The way people say that in this community is just so, it's just so fucking disrespectful.
Wait, how awful
Yeah,
is
that's okay. Yes,
Why?
okay, it's disrespectful, but more people play the game. That's why they get so much more viewership.
Is there not
They have way more people.
Yeah.
What
they
else?
do.
What else is it, Nate? What else?
That
What
is
else
so
are they
true.
doing better?